3-hour National Park Tour, and we paddled from the ranger station, and now we're on a very unique island. You can see behind me mangrove trees. These are red mangroves. You can always tell the red because they've got all those prop roots at the base, and very unusual tree. But as you walk over this way, you'll see that the mangrove shoreline is replaced by a very high area composed of shells. Where we have landed today, this is an ancient Calusa Indian shell mound, and we're going to do a little bit of hiking on the shell mound. We're on the Calusa Indian shell mound, and just a little point of interest over here, you see at the base of this this buttonwood tree, you see this green plant, and I feel like having a little bit of a salty snack, so I'm going to have some. This is called sea purslane, and it's crunchy, it's salty, but it's high in vitamin C. So the Calusa could eat this plant and avoid getting scurvy. Same way that the British Navy is known, they're known as limeys because they ate limes to get the vitamin C to avoid getting scurvy. So it's a beautiful little plant, succulent, crunchy, and there we are. Now here we have this big tree. This is known as the gumbo limbo. Okay. And when you're in the 10,000 Islands and you see this tree, it's telling you that you're on high ground, because this tree will not grow where its roots are in the water. And so when you see one of these trees in the 10,000 Islands, that's an indicator that you may be standing on a Calusa Indian shell mound, an ancient shell mound, because it has the high ground. So that's a great indicator, and we are indeed on a Calusa shell mound. Now this tree, like I said, we know it as the gumbo limbo, but it has another name. The locals call it the tourist tree because it has red peeling bark, just like some of the tourists. All right, so we're at the top of the Calusa shell mound, and right here you can see this concrete structure behind me. This is an old cistern that was used for holding water, and you can see, look inside, still holds water to this day. And the last residents of this island left in the 1950s. So this structure is probably about 100 years old, still holds water. And the Park Service did this nice little sign to tell you a little bit about it right there. These early residents that built this cistern and also a house, you can see over here, there's one of the cornerstones for their house. They built this out of concrete that they made themselves. And they would take the shells from the Calusa shell mound and cook them in a hot fire. And then they would pulverize the shells into dust. That formed the lime, which they would then mix with sand and shells and water, and they made concrete. They called it tabby concrete, and still solid. Amazing stuff. That's what you had to do to be a settler in these islands. You had to be very resourceful. And this marker here tells about the Bogus family that lived on this island as early as the 1870s. And in 1912 he built his home. We saw the cornerstones and we saw the cistern. That was his. And right over here you can see there is an artesian well. This well was dug by the Collier Corporation in 1922. They dug 384 feet deep, and they got an artesian well that pumps out fresh water to this day. And this is a saltwater island, totally surrounded by salt water, yet there's a freshwater well right there. Here, from one corner of the shell mound to another shell mound, The Park Service put this boardwalk through the swamp, and gives you kind of a neat view into the red mangrove swamp. Not just red mangroves, there are also black mangroves here and white mangroves. We're here at a low tide right now, so you can see all the muck down below us. But at high tide, this would all be water. Oh, and there's that white bird back there is a little blue heron. It's a juvenile. And the way I know that is its legs are blue-green. If it had black legs and yellow feet, then that would be a snowy egret, but that's a little blue heron, juvenile. And it looks like a running stream, but it's actually just the tide going out. The island is emptying of all of its water. All right, we have kayaked around this island, and we are now at a wall of shells that you can see behind me. And this is an ancient Calusa Indian shell mound that's built up 10 feet above sea level over an area of 40 acres. And all built with the shells from the meals of the ancient Calusa. And some interesting things to look at here. Well, first of all, right after landing, I found several pieces of pottery. And these are just small shards here, but let me show you what I got over here. I'm going to put this down right up here, up at the higher area. This one is really significant. If you look at this pottery, you can see a definite artwork on the outside of the pot. And the Calusa were not known to decorate their pots. The Calusa pottery was very plain. So this piece of pottery was acquired through trade with other tribes that paid tribute to the Calusa. Calusa were a very warlike group that demanded tribute from weaker tribes. And that's what this is. You can see right here, this is the rim of the pot, and here are the decorations. And if you look at this sideways, you can see it was a very shallow bowl. So it may have been a cooking utensil or maybe a serving bowl, hard to say. But now, if you are in the national park and you find something like this, you must leave it in place. It's illegal to take anything from the national park, but especially artifacts such as this. And what we're talking about here, this piece of pottery, could be 1,500 years old. And we are able to touch this and handle history right here on the spot. One of the interesting things is that when you feel the inside of the pot, you can actually feel the finger marks of the person that made the pot. Very cool.